Okay, so I have a passage response here from a ninth grader on the chapter The Sound of the Shell from The Lord of the Flies, and I'm going to go through it and show you the things I'm looking for as I grade a passage, as I grade a response paragraph. So The Sound of the Shell is what they title it, and that's fine. That's the chapter title, so they should actually put quotations around it. Smaller texts like chapters or essays or poems get quotes around them. And then right away I noticed that they've put quotes around the novel title, and that should actually be underlined. Novels and longer works get underlined. So just get that straight right from the start. And I'll go ahead and read the response and make some comments in the margins and explain some of the things I'm looking for. In the first chapter of Lord of the Flies, Ralph, a 12-year-old boy, got stranded on what he thought was a peaceful island. This is an okay beginning, but it's an introduction to the chapter, and it's not really an introduction to any specific topic. And so right away I say, topic sentence. There's no topic sentence here. It's just an introduction to what happens in the first chapter of Lord of the Flies. I also noticed that they use Arabic numerals, and they really should write that. So it'd be 12-year-old boy. The other thing I noticed in the first sentence is they've got the verb tense wrong right from the beginning, and then the whole response actually happens to be in past tense. Whenever you're doing academic writing, you don't want to be in past tense. You want to be in what's called academic present tense. So I just write off here, academic present tense, APT. So right away there's quite a few things wrong with this first sentence, and we're already kind of starting off on the wrong foot. But it's not terrible. It's just, and it's a good introductory sentence. It should be about whatever aspect that they're going to be analyzing. Whether that's tone, mood, some theme in the book, or even just the diction or the way the author's writing style. I don't know yet because it's just an introduction to the chapter. Just so we're clear here, that would be gets and thinks is. So now the sentence reads, in the first chapter of Lord of the Flies, Ralph, a 12-year-old boy, gets stranded on what he thinks is a peaceful island. Now I won't fix the rest of the verbs. They're all going to be in past tense. So just keep that in mind, that if you were revising this response yourself, you would want to change all the verbs. Let's read the next sentence. The author used this vivid description of the island with a blinding effulgence. Right away I'm confused because the way this reads, they're saying that the author wrote with a blinding effulgence. And that's not what they want to say. They want to say that the author's writing describes the island as having a blinding effulgence. So I just cross all this out here, and I say the author describes, nice active verb, the island as having a blinding effulgence. Having a blinding effulgence. Okay, so now we got that cleared up, but there's another little issue here. Whenever you're talking about a piece of a work of fiction, we never talk about the author. If it's an essay or a biography, yeah, you could use the word author, but really what we want to say is narrator, because it's not Golding per se, who's that third-person omniscient voice in the case of Lord of the Flies, that's narrating the story. He's called the narrator. So now it reads, the narrator describes the island as having a blinding effulgence. That's good, that's clear. Here's a little mistake. They should move that period over here. But if I read the next sentence, I'll see something else. This started off the book with an oppressive, menacing mood. Very short staccato sentences that don't flow necessarily very well. So I would change this. I'd say creating. Now I've added another active verb. I'm going to not put a period here now. I'm going to put a comma. And now the sentence reads, the narrator describes the island as having a blinding effulgence, creating an oppressive and menacing mood. But at the same time, this is quite vague. So that's another thing that I'll write. Just because the author describes it as being full of light, that's what blinding effulgence means, that doesn't necessarily tell us why it's an oppressive mood. They need to talk about the heat, and they might even need to use a better quote to sort of express how the oppressive and menacing mood is created through the author's word choice. So that's pretty vague. And the other thing is, because this quote was so awkwardly incorporated, I might also write this on a paper, which just means incorporate your quote better. INC is short for incorporate. So we've learned three terms here, APT, INC, and vague. And this just is academic present tense. This is incorporate your quote. And this means you need to give us more detail to explain your point. But they have at least finally determined an aspect, and the aspect seems to be the mood of the book. Let's read on. Ralph met a plump boy named Piggy, and they continued to search around the area for life. As a basic survival instinct, the pair wondered whether there were more people stranded on the island. While searching, they came across a conch, which Piggy says could be blown to make a sound. Well, this is mostly plot summary. It's not necessarily terrible. Hopefully they're going to explain how the conch connects to the mood, I hope. But I'm going to go ahead and fix some of the sentence structure right here. Ralph, I'm not going to worry about verb tense, but Ralph met a plump boy named Piggy, and they wonder whether there are more people stranded on the island. Okay, so that just makes that a lot more succinct. And then it says, while searching, this should be come, but I'm not going to fix that. While searching, they came across a conch, which Piggy says could be blown to make a sound. Eventually, Ralph blew into the conch, and the other kids came into their sight as if drawn by the sound made by the conch. This is why the chapter was called The Sound of the Shell. Well, right here I could combine again, which is why the chapter is called The Sound of the Shell. The conch was a symbol for leadership. Ralph became the chief of the group because of the conch and the sound it made. Rather Jack, the leader of the boys' choir. Rather Jack. Okay, so rather than Jack is what they should have said here, and right away I might just say that's very awkward syntax. So if I ever write awkward, it's because the sentence isn't flowing as well as it could. And so, and in this case they left the word than out, but the whole sentence is a little awkward. So it says the conch was a symbol for leadership. Ralph became the chief of the group because of the conch and the sound it made, rather than Jack, the leader of the boys' choir. Jack had nothing to assert his leadership, and he lost the vote. Okay, again, what do you mean nothing to assert his leadership? Again, we're being vague. This needs to be explained. The other thing is I think it might be a little wrong because he already was in charge of the choir boys, and so that's not even talked about here. It's neglecting a major nuance. So I guess we've learned a new term, awkward, and I've had to call this past part of, or this sentence, vague. And some of this needs to be, these sentences could be combined to read a little more fluently as well. But we'll go ahead and read on. The first political negation came into play when Jack said, "The choir belongs to you, of course." All right, now right away, we all know it wasn't Jack that said that. It was Ralph who said that. Negation is the wrong word, so I might write wrong word, WW, or I might just change it. I think he meant to say negotiation. So Jack, this needs to be explained, and then this sentence, the first political negotiation comes into play when Ralph says, "The choir belongs to you, of course." I'm going to have to change the verb tense here, even though I said I wouldn't, because I don't want to do it for every verb, but now I'm going to make this flow better. The first political negotiation comes into play when Ralph says, "The choir belongs to you, of course." This was said to avoid future conflicts. So I put a comma here and say, which helps Ralph avoid future conflicts. And again, leadership conflicts, this is a vague again. We talked about this so much in class. I mean, I want him to talk about the power struggle, which, by the way, ties in nicely to their original point about the oppressive or menacing mood. The fact that the boys already have a power struggle and that Ralph has had to, share power in order to avoid future conflict highlights the fact that even though the boys have a pretty positive attitude about being on the island, underneath that there is a sort of menacing mood that's in contrast to the boys' positive attitude about being alone without adult supervision. Let's read on now. Ralph, along with Jack and Simon, who were both summoned by the conch, continued to explore the island. Piggy was excluded in exploring the island. Jack was aggressive, and his main focus was to look for food. Ralph and Simon, on the other hand, were very positive and calm because Ralph searched for items that were useful for their survival, while Simon, being the younger one, was more concerned with the beauty of the island. Okay, basically, suddenly we've gone into a laundry list of events that took place, and that's all summary. There's very little analysis. There's really no analysis at all here, and it has nothing to do with the aspect that they seem to be trying to analyze. So that's just all unnecessary. What needs to happen here is the conch is a symbol, which, by the way, I'll just say that, using the word symbol correctly, getting into the idea of mood, that's all very good. But it needs to be connected to the original point about how the author has created a certain mood. And again, maybe a better quotation would help support that. But we know that Jack and Ralph and the other boys have a somewhat positive attitude, though the conch is a symbol of his leadership, and somehow he's able to create a positive attitude about being on this island, even though the background of it is sort of menacing. Again, I don't know exactly what they were trying to get at here, so they need to connect everything a lot better for me. And the other thing is, when it says, the conch is a symbol for leadership, I think there's, this is a great place to add another quotation, because I remember that the narrator explained specifically the reason why the boys vote for Ralph, even though Jack is the one that seems to be the natural leader, even though they didn't say that here, is because of the conch. So again, a lot of things need to be tied together to make this response better. In the end, they talked about the mood, they talked about symbolism, they had a pretty good understanding, even though it wasn't tied together very well. I'd probably give them on ideas an 8.5 using our 6 traits rubric. And then on sentence fluency, again, there are lots of, the quotations are poorly incorporated. That also happens here, so I'd write INC here as well. So that's a major issue. Also, some of the transitions and the fact that some of the short sentences could be combined so easily to make it flow better. I'd probably give it a C- or a 7. And again, we look at the rubric to find the descriptors for why it's a 7. And then for word choice, actually they use mood pretty well. They use symbolism pretty well. It's not terrible. I'd probably go ahead and give that, an 8.5. So that in the end, what we really have is a B- response, right? And that's how I average them out. Just take that 0.5, that 0.5. You got 8, 8, 8, and it averages out to a B- or an 80%, or however you want to think of it. Again, look at the rubric criteria to see the descriptors. This is the grade I would give this response, and hopefully now you have a clearer sense of what I'm looking for in a response paragraph. Make sure you underline your titles of the title of the novel. If you're using the chapter, which they put it in quotes here, which is fantastic, make sure you put quotations around it. Make sure that you're in academic present tense throughout the entire response, and make sure you're using good quotes to support your ideas. And I guess the last thing I'd say here is just make sure you have one aspect only, and at all costs avoid summary. A one sentence summary after you introduce your topic by having a topic sentence is okay, but then you need to dig into whatever aspect it is that you want to analyze. Okay, thank you for watching. I hope that helps you understand how I'm going to be grading you this year.